So my folks actually, when they first got married, they were living in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill area, that over there. And they moved here. I guess they were waiting for a slot to get into the projects. So they got an apartment at 90 Avenue D, and I think me, my sister, and my brother were all born in Bellevue while they had that apartment. So we all lived there from birth. Yeah, I lived in two separate buildings in Jacob Riis. I lived in 90 first till I guess I must have been about 11 or 12 when we moved from 90 to 905. 905 FDR Drive, the short buildings over by the highway, right across from the ramp that goes over to the park. And I lived there till we were 15. I was 15. And then they moved us to Brooklyn. I went to Virginia Day Nursery. Do you know Virginia Day Nursery? It's still there. It's over by the flagpole. You know the flagpole between Avenue D and the FDR Drive, at the end of the first section of projects. One of the last buildings there in the center had a daycare center, and they still do actually. I went there maybe 2 years ago, and it was still there. And so I learned, it was kindergarten. I learned basic, your alphabet and stuff like that. I was there in the early 60s, or mid 60s, whatever. And it was nice. They'd feed you really good food and stuff. I was a child, so my memory is a little bit vague, but I remember it was pleasant. It was real pleasant. It was a nice place to be. And I remember learning how to tie my shoe there. But I went to grammar school right here in St. Bridget, and I spent 8 years there. Up the block at St. Bridget's for 8 years. St. Bridget's, I was baptized, confirmed, and communed in that church as well. So I feel like 7th Street is definitely a big chunk of my history, because I walked up and down this block thousands and thousands of times. So I'm very familiar with the concrete here. I was a member of the BBR for a long time. So I spent a lot of time going there after in the evening. The BBR was a great experience. The Boys Brotherhood Republic, which is a kind of boys club, or was back then. I believe that they have girls there now, but it was kind of like a boys club, privately funded and operated. It wasn't under the umbrella of the boys club. They were originally on 4th Street, or 3rd Street, was it? An old building. And I remember going there. I remember the boxing ring there, and the creaky stairs, and it was filled with kids. But it was an old tenement. It started out in an old tenement. When they built the new facility here, it was. I mean, they must have spent a small fortune on it, because they had an official, what's it called, regulation sized gym for playing ball, with all brand new. It looked like it was Madison Square Garden to us anyway, with the folding backboards and everything, and clear plexiglass. They filmed a commercial there when they first opened, and it was like the Knicks or something, or say it was some pro team. I think it was the Knicks. And it was an advertisement for either the NBA or something like that. But they used the gym there as, to shoot the commercial, because it was the real thing. And everybody all the teams around New York wanted to go there, because it was such a nice court, brand new, and the real thing. They had bleachers, everything. It was really nice. It felt like members of the real world. It wasn't, they weren't giving us scraps there. It was nice. And of course you're in there with a bunch of different guys from the projects. So the dynamic was, you had friends, and then no matter where you went in the Lower East Side, you had to fight, man. Every day it was like some shit, It could be racial, it could be, you know, because it's a different group of people. It didn't matter, but you always constantly like, you know, back then that vibe was, I don't know if it was because of the war or whatever, but people were hostile, you know. Everybody was like, or because we're growing up in the 70s and in the ghetto, and there was a lot of tension, and people were constantly, you know, there was always some shit breaking, you know, jumping off. People constantly fighting. The opening of the amp was, I remember, I guess, like I said, I must have been, it was during the Johnson administration. So it was early Vietnam War, probably 66, 67, maybe I was 7 or 8, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Lady Bird Johnson, the First Lady, came for the inauguration of the, or whatever, it's not inauguration, that's not the word, it's the christening of that. There was a major project, apparently, like this urban development thing. And they you know, they kicked it off with this big gala event, and yeah, the First Lady was there, and she like cut the ribbon or something. But I remember it was a big deal. After that, during the summers, they'd have big name acts come to the amp. I remember seeing Ray Barreto there. I saw James Brown there. To name two more of the memorable. I mean, this is a long time ago, but those two definitely distinctly stayed in my mind. I mean, it was very cool. That was probably a few years later. I don't remember so much the stuff around the 60s, but the early 70s, it was jumping. It was during the summer. The amp was like, that was the hub for so many people from projects probably from the Smith houses, you know, all along the East River used to come over to the amp. It used to get really packed because they had such main, you know, like major attractions there, and it was just, there was constantly people. In the summer it was like going to the beach, and they had the sprinklers going, and really the smell of the sprinkler smell. And it was just always so nice and cool there. There were those pillars that had these huge timbers up on top, and we'd all climb up there. And, you know, we just get filled with kids. I mean, you're not supposed to be up there. If you fall, you could crack your head. But it was that was like, you know, everybody had a spot up there. And there was always music everywhere in the summer. There was conga playing on those, you know, those cement things that they had like the weird sculptures sticking up like totem poles kind of. Those were big spots for people just to take over that spot, and that was their cement slab. It was that was in the summer. The summers were completely densely packed. It was a cool place to be. It was really kind of exciting. I mean, over the years it gradually thinned out, but there was a peak there, maybe 71, 72, 73, where it was really the place to be in the Lower East Side. In the winter it was snowed in, so you had this bowl, and people would be sleighing on the thing. It was kind of cool, you know, as long as because it was all concrete steps. And if it was covered, I mean, you could sleigh down the thing, and it was a fun spot. I guess on the weekends we'd spend a lot of time going to the movies throughout my I guess when I was a young teen, and we went to Loews Delancey and to the Academy of Music, which. Loews Delancey is obviously on Delancey, and the Academy of Music was on 14th Street. And there was also the Jefferson, but Jefferson was mostly Spanish movies back then. It was mostly, you know, all just Spanish language films. But there was also a cheaper theater on Avenue B between 12th and 11th, or over there. It later became like a Pentecostal church, but it was a smaller theater, and we'd go there sometimes. Also, where there was another theater not far. Oh, the St. Mark's, but that was a little later. That was on St. Mark's and Second Avenue. The Pitt Street Pool. I mean, that was like between Pitt Street and 23rd Street Pool. I spent it seems like and then 10th Street later when they opened up 10th Street. It seems like that's what we did in the summer. We used to. I mean, besides at that point when I became a graffiti artist, I mean, then my interests were somewhere else. But we did. I spent a great deal of even any day camp that you went to, you'd end up going to the pool. So we spent a lot of time at the Pitt Street, 23rd Street, and 10th Street pool. But Pitt Street in particular, because it was pretty close by. Back then they had a high diving board. People used to high dive into a really pretty deep pool. I think they closed that down. They changed that. And it was huge. It was really hectic. There was always like some crazy shit going down, like people fighting, this, that, the other. I remember you always have to wear flip flops because there was always busted glass everywhere. It wasn't the safest spot, but it was, and they had the old wire basket and key system where they give you a key on a rubber band, you wear it around your ankle or whatever, and that was your key or your wrist, and lock your stuff up. I think all the pools had that system. 23rd Street as well. It's pretty. That must date back to to like to like 5 points or something. But it was this was not a soft neighborhood. This was a tough ass neighborhood with gangs and a lot of crime. A lot of like hostile vibes. You had to, keep your head about you. There was constantly some. I mean, it seemed like we spent a great deal of our childhood running, like either playing or running from somebody who was running after us, because it was getting chased was like part of an everyday thing. In terms of like gangs, I mean, first of all, I was in Catholic school, and my mother was pretty strict, and I wasn't about to join any gang. I mean, I wasn't, I was not a candidate for being in a gang. But I knew there was people around me that were in gangs, so you knew guys, T333 was like a warlord for the Dynamite Brothers, and he was a friend of mine. And then Cool Breeze 226, all those guys were baby dynamite or young dynamites, And I had no static ever with any of them. As a matter of fact, it was good to know a couple of gang members because if something were to jump off, you could just like say, "Yo, I got this little problem," and these guys were more than happy to show up. And I saw people go down. I see people get killed, like shot. I remember Pichingo and Papa and Pichingo from 6th Street. Pichingo got killed. I forgot. Fredo's older brother walked out. Fredo walked out the building one day, right here in 90 Avenue D. One of the 90 guys, and just walking out the building, caught a bullet right in his throat. Luckily, miraculously, he was saved. And I remember he always had that hole in his throat. Throughout our entire childhood, he spoke funny. I think one of his brothers was a javelin and got laid out in front of Moe's. Remember Moe's, the sporting goods store? That's where all the gangs used to have their colors printed. Moe's would make the embroideries. And some shit jumped off in front of there, and the dude was laid out, just shot in front of Moe's. So people were losing their lives over it. This was a javelin block. 7th Street was a javelin block. I knew Cato's and javelins. And I knew a few of those guys. I went to school with some of them. St. Bridget, and I mean, like Billy Bland. He lived up there. You remember Billy Bland? Frankie Bland and Billy Bland? Yeah. Like it was 71 or 72. I was 11, 12, whatever. No, I was 12 or 13. I think more 12. But my cousin grew up, for the most part, in Washington Heights. And there was no graffiti down here, okay? Not that I didn't see anything on the walls. Maybe just like, bullshit, but there was no like stylized, organized graffiti, like New York City style graffiti. So I was going, I spent a lot of time up in the Heights, and my cousin turned me on and said, yo, look what these cats are doing. So I was really attracted to the whole, to the, the style element and the kind of secret culture kind of thing. So I wanted to get in. So I started practicing and started tagging around. And then, so it was me and Alvin. I got him, I kind of, pulled him along with me. It was Bomb 1 and Snake 3. And we were pretty much the only tags around. All of a sudden, we start seeing these two other names, Man Maker and Mr. Death. And it was obvious, like these cats were hanging around like in the 120s, because it was kind of like Cool Cliff 120 style and all that, or Harlem. It was definitely like a Harlem edge to remember everybody had a certain style. So we finally met up with these guys, spray painting, and we were like the first 4 graffiti writers in the whole projects between. Nobody was writing. So for like I guess maybe 6 months or so, we continued to spray the entire. The only tags you would see were those 4 names: Bomb 1, Snake 3, Man Maker, Mr. Death, Man Maker, and Mr. Death. Man Maker, I don't know what that means, but that's what he wrote. And then the guys that were, we were hanging out, the 90 boys and stuff, they wanted to get in on it. And then in the next year or so, everybody like Global, and this guy's making up like these whack-ass names just to get in on it. Some guys, they do it for a little while, and some guys were more serious about it, some even more obsessive about it. And then in the surrounding area, a lot of, the whole graffiti thing was evolving. I guess other people started seeing the stuff from uptown or Brooklyn or whatever. I'm not trying to say that we influenced everybody, but we were definitely on the FDR and between 14th and maybe as far as Smith, the only tags, And then it's like it's as if it happened at one time, and it's like the Mongol hordes just kind of, everybody just started writing. I remember how I met AFX too. I saw his name everywhere down in the. He was all over the Lower East Side. I don't even remember how we met, but we decided that we should paint together because we were both getting up on the BMTs and the Lower East Side on the street. I forgot how we met, man. It's a good one. But we ended up teaming up for a good while, for like a year. Yeah. And then, AFX was funny. He would like gravitate to, he would find different partners, which was fine because I was mostly on my own anyway. But then he started like hitting with guys who were doing throw-ups, which was... And I was kind of like, you know what, I'm not really feeling the throw-up thing, like In and Comet. And these guys were doing these, like 10,000 pieces out of one can. And it was just, and I never seen anybody fill in so lightly like AFX. Like, fat cap, Real light. He would squeeze a lot of pieces out of one can. And I guess we just, just kind of went our separate ways. But, there was no hard feelings. Just like, whatever, you kids, it's like, you gotta kind of accept that New York is this really expensive piece of real estate that every closet is worth, a gazillion dollars. So it's always, it's always evolving, right? New York, you remember that I think it was the Sunday Daily News. They had New York's changing scene, and they'd show you like what it looked like what any particular corner looked like 50 years ago and how it looks now. And that's always happened. So the fact that, I mean, the Lower East Side got whatever revitalized and became worth a fortune, and people got pushed out. It sucks. I mean, but that's what happens, man. That's what happens with a city like New York, you know? People make a place desirable in terms of culture. You know, there's a lot going on. During the 80s, this place was you know, pumping. There was a lot going on here. So every, you know, like follower wants to be part of that, and then what they end up doing is chasing out the avant-garde. And then, you know, these people have to find new places so that they can get chased out of there. And that's what I mean. That's all. This is bought and sold already. There's nothing. I mean, there's doorman buildings. There's people paying, you know, for your apartment, like, you know, $3.5 grand for this apartment, easy. Not even an argument. It's not an exaggeration, because I've fixed. I mean, I've renovated apartments like this one, and that's what they rent for $3 or $4 grand, which is crazy. I can't afford to live here anymore. I don't really want to, because it's too much distraction at this point. Yeah, it's Manhattan, so it's going to be, you know, I don't know. Maybe it'll take another Great Depression before any of this is, you know, undesirable.